Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Proposed Minimum Requirement. We're looking today at the demo of Skull and Bones from Ubisoft. And for once, the proposed minimum spec are clear. So we know we need to be at 1080p at low settings to reach 30 FPS. And that is with the Intel Core i7-4790 or a Ryzen 5 1600, NVIDIA GTX 1060 6GB variant, and the AMD Radeon RX570 4GB variant, 8GB in dual channel, Windows 10, and 65GB of SSD. Welcome to Respawn PC, I'm Dunk, let's game on. I will start with the Ryzen 5 1600 because I don't have the Intel variant, then 8GB dual channel, the GTX 1060 6GB, I also have the RX570, it will be further in the video, and we're going to play at 1080p low settings to reach the 30 FPS. Any upscaling, any FSR and motion blur is deactivated. And at C we reach an average of 60 FPS. This is highly playable so far, but we're going to test also when we reach the first city, because at C there's not much asset to load. But let's test our settings at C first. Then when you push to the medium settings, we reach an average of 47 FPS at C. Really highly playable. I wonder if the 30 FPS at low settings is in city, because so far there's zero issue with those settings. And for I, pushing the preset at I, you have a little drop of FPS, passing from 47 to 43. Still highly playable, but we are still at sea, and we're also sailing a fishing boat, so don't take that test too seriously. And we still have some headroom. The memory, we are at 6.8GB. The CPU is running at 40% of usage. The GPU is at 95% of usage. A little bit of headroom for the GPU, and we're using 4.5GB of the 6. Now, just for fun, I decided to try also very high settings. We reach an average of 40 FPS, and the GPU is at 98% utilization. That's quite nice, but the VRAM of the GPU is at 4.1. There isn't much asset to load when you are at C. The memory usage and the CPU usage, they didn't change. And now, just for fun part 2, I've tried very high, but with FSR enabled at quality, and we reach an average of 51 FPS at C. But RAM usage, CPU usage, GPU usage, and the VRAM of the GPU usage is unmoved. We still have 2GB of VRAM available for the GPU. Everything will happen in city, you'll see. Because at C, you can see everything go seamlessly. But in the city, it will not be, you will see. Now I'm going to quickly pass the RX570 4GB variant. Not sure why they choose this one to compete with the 1060 6GB. Anyway, the result is at 56 FPS at medium settings. The GPU is pegged at 100% usage, but only using 2.9GB of VRAM instead of his full 4GB. But again, we are at C, and there isn't much asset to load in the VRAM of the GPU. Then I jump directly to very high settings with FSR enabled at quality at C, and we reach an average of 45 FPS. The GPU is pegged at 100%, but still not using is 4GB of VRAM. For the memory of the PC, we reach a 7.4. We are maxing out the available memory. There's some left for Windows running in the background. But now let's jump to the city. Now, in the city, still with the RX 570 4GB at 1080p, we go down to low settings and we get an average of 29 FPS. The GPU is pegged at 100%, but this time the VRAM is at 3.9. We max out the VRAM of the GPU. The CPU is still at 50%, so we probably can go lower than that. And for the memory, we have 7.3, 7.4 of usage. Seems Ubisoft was quite right on that proposed minimum requirement, at least for the GPU. Jumping back to the GTX 1060 6GB in city, we get a little bit better result than the RX 570, and that is probably because of the VRAM. The GTX 1060 is 6GB, and now we're using almost 5. The GPU is pegged between 98 and 100%, and the FPS go as low as 26 and as high as 45. There's still a lot of headroom for the CPU, but Ubisoft was quite on the spot for the proposed minimum requirement, and adding FSR give you a little gain of 4 to 5 FPS, but every FPS count when you're already that low. And that's it for Skull and Bone. The game will come out February 16. This is only the demo. Thanks for have come watching, and see you in the next one. And subscribe!